James lives. Yes, this is inspired by Aerith lives, but it's definitely something that's bothered people throughout this whole entire game's existence. Of course, during the true ending, you see James suddenly appear and guide Fox out through the tunnel and back to safety out of Venom. Once you leave there, another difference from the bad end is that you see James fly off the tunnel before Fox escaping with him, and then, of course, Fox is looking around, and it's like, what's wrong, Fox? And nothing's wrong. This is just very much up to speculation of what exactly the deal was with that, is that maybe James really was there, and he survived somehow, and then after that, he was like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I was meant to pass away, so now I'm just going to move on, disappear, or if it was a ghost of him, or Fox going insane, or what it was exactly. Killing innocent / organic life. So throughout the game, you of course are mostly like shooting at people who are part of Anjos's army, as well as like robots they've built. However, in some stages, such as Aquas is the most obvious one, and some other areas like Titania, you are just straight up killing like some of the natural life that's there. Well, I mean, maybe some of it's like mutated from them, but that's not their fault. And yeah, it's just kind of an odd and disturbing thing to think about when you're reminding yourself of it, especially since you're supposed to be the good guys here. Sector Y negative aura. Yes, it's inspired by Wet Dry World, but I still like to have ground to these, and this is something I've always kind of felt while playing the stage I like to include on here, being that Sector Y, despite potentially only being the second level you can play during a session, just has this really foreboding, kind of ominous, just uneasy aura to it that's creepier than some of the other levels. I feel this way for Sector X too, but that one's like more so supposed to be like a space like junkyard or something. But Y is like more like gradually and like alive populated, but I still feel this way just because it just feels so much weird and off and spooky compared to everything else. Like, it just feels way more dark, and the boss at the end just feels like really kind of like lonely and empty and just all really weird and off. And I guess the fact that you're fighting these almost Gundam like mech things and they're like a humanoid shape, as if you're more so like shooting like an actual person, just helps make Sector Y feel a lot more unnerving. Playable Star Wolf. This is something I've talked about in a previous Iceberg chart that I won't mention because I don't like it, but this was a rumor far down on there too, and it's just the idea that Star Fox 64 to this day is still like almost objectionably, it's widely regarded still as the best Star Fox game. It has everything you could want in a Star Fox game. Like, it has all of these great levels, it has all of the characters there, it has all of these different methods of playing, so why not a playable wolf? On foot gameplay wasn't meant to be final. This is something that I thought of after reading a couple of comments, and it's interesting to think about. So at the very beginning of this, I mentioned how rough the models look in on-foot gameplay, and just everybody agrees it's such a weird secret, and just everything about it is very odd and very like unfinished looking almost. Like, that's the main thing, is that I saw a comment that said something like, oh, I see why they hit this away so well, just look at how it looks. And it is weird because a lot of people probably won't ever unlock this, especially as kids, and a lot of people still don't know about it, and it just kind of makes me think that maybe it was meant to be like a final thing that was going to be more polished and stuff, but it was like, no, the game has to go out, and for whatever reason, instead of using like the models that you see in the opening cutscene when they're all running and stuff, they have these weird versions of them that are super, super rough and low poly. And you know how in Super Mario 64, how there's the low poly Mario if the camera's out far enough? It looks like that, but they like fucked up so that it's always the low poly model, and it just feels like something like Golden Eyes multiplayer, but not complete, where they just quickly threw it in the final like weeks of development, and they just never removed it because it was something that they wanted to do, and they only had so many little assets left, and it's like, oh, let's just put it in somewhere where hardly anybody will see it. It's kind of a shame. Level select screen isn't at all literal, so this is kind of like a more needless entry, but it's something that I've always interpreted of, because like, I remember like dumb jokes from a while ago where it was like, oh my god, just fly around the solar system for Corneria straight to Venom, but I never saw it as exactly like that, but more so that it's just showing like orders of how they're doing missions, and like they have to visit other places because like those places are getting like invaded and bombed and shit, and it's like, well, we have to take care of that before we face Andros. And this is more so just showing the progression of it, and maybe it is how Wildlight is laid out, but again, it's still from the standpoint of like they were never meant to go directly from Cornelia to Venom. Bill and Kat were originally Miyu and Faye. Bill and Kat are two ally pilots who were added to this game apparently later in development. Also, like the voice acting was suggested by Miyamoto to include NPC pilots, so it feels like your choices matter more and they affect it. And yeah, you know, we've talked about how they come back in later levels and stuff if you do help them, blah blah blah, and these characters have always stand out as like unofficial members of Star Fox who like might as well be a part of the team. And then Miyu and Faye were part of the team in Star Fox 2, but that was then unreleased at the time. And this is an idea that maybe at some point they considered having Miyu and Faye in the game in some form, and they thought having like 6 teammates all at once would be too much, so they got relegated to other roles, and it's like, hey, let's still get a chance to use these characters who are in this unreleased game. Like they did that with Wolf and Leon. And yeah, again, there's no proof or anything, but it's just an interesting theory to think about that they eventually just turn it to Bill and Kat to disassociate from that. Game is about tackling nightmares. So I've heard a lot about how Star Fox 64, we've just talked about this, is a really fucking weird game a lot of the times, and it just often has this creepy atmosphere, especially in the sector levels, and very like threatening and empty. And then Andros himself is fucking terrifying. He is a glamorous N64 model. It's amazing he looks as good as he does in there, and it just makes me think of just how much people think that this game is like borderline pure nightmare fuel just the entire way through. And the game is about like Fox overcoming like what his dad left behind. It's this like almost like kind of like scared and like provoked and targeted like kid left alone. Makes me think that like maybe the whole entire game's like theme and message about that is that it's about like facing the fear and like going over it and coming up on top. Suddenly encountering unknown objects and enemies. This fits with everything we just talked about, with how fucking strange and weird this game is, as well as the fact that there's always something new to see every playthrough you do. And this is a very speculative, up for interpretation final entry, just saying that what if people have seen strange shit in this game that nobody else has before, and creepy shit like that. Like, I've got a picture of Demon Form Andros. We'll have the design of that on the side of this for the image, just because it fits so fucking well for the idea of this. And yeah, I mean, Star Fox 64, it's a very open-ended, kind of spooky game. That does it for the whole entire Iceberg. Thank you for watching this, and let me know what you think if you have anything to add, and I'll see you next time.